Lesnar surrounded by authorities, refusing to cooperate, telling everyone not to touch him. This was supposed to be entertainment, but the Beast incarnate now appears 44 times in a federal trafficking lawsuit, exposed in courtrooms, stripped from video games, erased from WWE programming. Fans demanded he be gone forever, and then something happened that nobody saw coming. The Beast's first brush with the law. The year was 2001, and Brock Lesnar was absolutely nobody's household name just yet, not even close. He was grinding away in Ohio Valley Wrestling, which was basically WWE's minor leagues down in Louisville, Kentucky, where young talent went to learn the ropes before making it to the big show. The man was absolutely massive, obviously gifted with genetics that made other wrestlers look like they had skipped every single gym session since the day they were born, and he was hungry beyond measure to make it to the grandest stages professional wrestling had to offer. What Lesnar didn't anticipate, what he couldn't have possibly seen coming, was that his road to superstardom would take an unexpected and rather dramatic detour through the back of a police cruiser. Picture this scene for a moment because it's important to understand the context of everything that follows. Lesnar is driving through Louisville, probably thinking about his next training session, maybe contemplating what new move he's going to perfect to impress the scouts who were watching his every match with keen interest. Then it happens. A routine traffic stop, the kind of mundane thing that happens to thousands upon thousands of people every single day without any incident whatsoever. Except when officers approached Lesnar's vehicle that fateful day, they discovered something that immediately escalated the entire situation, from a minor inconvenience to a full-blown legal nightmare that threatened to destroy everything he had worked so hard to build. The police found what they believed to be a large quantity of illegal anabolic steroids sitting right there in his vehicle. Now, you absolutely have to understand the context of this era in professional wrestling. This was well before WWE implemented their wellness policy, a time when the locker room culture around performance-enhancing substances was, shall we say, considerably more relaxed and far less scrutinized than it is in today's modern era of sports entertainment. Lesnar was immediately slapped with felony charges for illegal possession of controlled substances, and suddenly his promising wrestling career, the one he had sacrificed so much for, looked like it might come to a crashing end before it ever truly had the chance to begin. For months, that must have felt like an eternity. Lesnar's entire future hung in the balance like a sword suspended by the thinnest of threads. The wrestling world whispered about whether this beast of a man would ever get his shot at the big time, or whether he would become just another cautionary tale about promising careers derailed by controversy. Then came May 2001, and with it, the lab results that would change absolutely everything about the trajectory of his life. The substances that had been confiscated were confirmed to be legal human growth hormones, not illegal anabolic steroids as originally suspected. His attorney described them as nothing more than vitamin-type supplements that were perfectly legal to possess, and just like that, almost as if by magic, the felony charges evaporated into thin air like morning mist. Lesnar walked away from this entire incident with his record completely clean and his WWE debut still very much on the table. By 2002, he was conquering the squared circle with a ferocity that few had ever witnessed, establishing himself as one of the most dominant and terrifying forces that professional wrestling had ever seen grace its rings. But here's the thing about controversy when it comes to Brock Lesnar, and this is something you need to understand going forward. It has this peculiar and almost supernatural habit of finding him, no matter where he goes, no matter what he does, no matter how hard he tries to stay out of trouble. Fast forward to July 2016, and Lesnar had already conquered both WWE and the Ultimate Fighting Championship, a feat that very few human beings on this planet could ever dream of accomplishing. He was the rare athlete who had legitimately reached the absolute mountaintop in two completely different combat sports, proving his dominance in ways that transcended any single discipline. His return to the octagon at UFC 200 against the dangerous Mark Hunt was supposed to be a celebration of his unparalleled greatness, a reminder to the entire world that the Beast incarnate could still hang with the very best heavyweight fighters on the planet despite years away from mixed martial arts competition. And hang he absolutely did. Lesnar dominated Mark Hunt for 3 brutal rounds, controlling the pace of the fight and earning a unanimous decision victory that had fans around the world losing their collective minds with excitement. He was reinstated as a legitimate and terrifying threat in the heavyweight division, and the money was flowing like never before in his already lucrative career. Lesnar earned a disclosed $2.5 million purse for that single fight, while Hunt received a comparatively modest $700,000. The gap in earnings reflected the gap in star power, and everyone involved seemed satisfied with the arrangement. But then the other shoe dropped, and when it dropped harder than anyone could have anticipated. Days after the fight that was supposed to cement his legacy, news broke that absolutely shook the combat sports world to its very core. Lesnar had tested positive for clomiphene in out-of-competition tests conducted on June 28, 2016. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with this particular substance, clomiphene is an estrogen blocker that's commonly used by athletes who are coming off steroid cycles to help restore their natural hormone production. It's basically a massive red flag waving frantically in the wind, telling anti-doping authorities in no uncertain terms that something highly suspicious has been going on behind closed doors. The controversy absolutely exploded because serious questions immediately arose about what UFC and USADA knew and precisely when they knew it. See, Lesnar had been granted a rare and highly controversial exemption from the standard 4-month testing pool requirement that applied to all other returning fighters. The first failed test results from June 28th weren't even available until after the fight had already taken place and the money had already changed hands, despite the fact that there was an option to expedite the results for an additional fee, which UFC and USADA simply chose not to pursue. The timing of everything seemed almost too convenient to be coincidental. Mark Hunt was absolutely livid when he learned the truth about what had happened. The man had stepped into the octagon believing with complete certainty that he was facing a clean opponent, someone who had earned their physical advantages through hard work and dedication alone. Now he was learning that the guy who had been pummeling him with devastating strikes for 15 brutal minutes might have had significant chemical assistance flowing through his veins the entire time. Hunt didn't just complain bitterly to the media about the injustice of it all. He went straight to the courthouse to seek the justice he believed he deserved. In January 2017, Hunt filed a comprehensive civil lawsuit against Zuffa LLC, UFC CEO Dana White, and Brock Lesnar himself. The allegations contained within that lawsuit were deadly serious and carried enormous implications. Hunt claimed that the defendants had actively conspired to allow Lesnar to compete while doping, thereby defrauding him of a fair fight and causing him significant financial, physical, and reputational damage that would follow him for years to come. He sought millions upon millions of dollars in damages under claims that included fraud, battery, civil conspiracy, and even racketeering under the powerful RICO statutes. Hunt's argument was compelling on its surface and resonated with many observers who felt the system was rigged against everyday fighters. He alleged that Dana White himself had personally assured him that Lesnar was clean and that the UFC had prioritized profits over fighter safety in a way that was both reckless and morally reprehensible. The battery claim was particularly interesting from a legal standpoint because Hunt argued that every single punch and every single takedown delivered by a doped Lesnar constituted an assault that he had never actually consented to. After all, he had agreed to fight a clean opponent, not a chemically enhanced one. Lesnar, for his part, blamed the whole unfortunate situation on tainted supplements that he claimed he had unknowingly ingested. He has never admitted to intentionally using steroids and has maintained that stance consistently to this very day. He received a retroactive 1-year suspension from USADA and was fined $250,000, which represented half of his disclosed purse. The victory over Hunt was eventually overturned to a no contest, erasing it from the official record books, but Lesnar's wallet remained considerably fatter than Hunt's despite the reversal. The lawsuit dragged on for years, becoming one of the longest-running and most closely watched legal sagas in the entire history of mixed martial arts. In February 2019, a judge dismissed most of Hunt's claims, including the powerful RICO allegations, calling the damages Hunt was seeking highly speculative and difficult to prove. But the battery, fraud, and conspiracy claims against Lesnar and White managed to survive the initial dismissal, and in 2021, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals actually revived the case and remanded it back for trial. Hope flickered brightly for Hunt and his supporters, but that hope ultimately wouldn't last very long at all. In September 2023, the presiding judge granted summary judgment to all of the defendants, finding that there was no credible evidence that UFC or White had any knowledge about the positive tests before the fight actually took place, or that they had deliberately lied to Hunt about Lesnar's status. Dana White's response to the ruling was characteristically blunt and dismissive. He called Hunt delusional and suggested the fighter had wasted every everyone's time and money with his frivolous lawsuit. The final nail in the coffin for Hunt's legal crusade came in April 2025, when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the 2023 ruling in its entirety. The three-judge panel found unanimously that Hunt had completely failed to demonstrate any quantifiable damages or provide sufficient proof of fraud that would meet the legal standard. Not only did Hunt lose his case entirely after nearly a decade of fighting, but he was also ordered to pay UFC's substantial legal fees exceeding $375,000. Hunt filed a desperate petition to the Supreme Court in June 2025, but the odds of the highest court in the land agreeing to review his case are considered extremely slim by virtually every legal expert who has examined the situation. The man who fought so hard for justice against what he perceived as a fundamentally corrupt system ended up owing more money than he could likely ever hope to pay back. He has publicly spoken about facing the very real possibility of bankruptcy as a direct result of this legal battle that consumed years of his life and drained his financial resources completely. Meanwhile, Brock Lesnar walked away unscathed once again, his bank account intact and his reputation among fans largely undiminished. But the legal troubles and controversies surrounding the Beast Incarnate were far from over. In fact, the biggest and most damaging scandal of his entire career was only just beginning to surface in ways that would shock the entire world of professional wrestling. The trafficking allegations that shook WWE. When Janelle Grant filed her lawsuit on January 25, 2024, the professional wrestling world experienced an earthquake that registered on every scale imaginable and sent shockwaves through every corner of the industry. The federal civil lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Connecticut, and it named defendants that included the most powerful man in wrestling history, Vince McMahon himself, along with former head of talent relations John Laurinaitis, and WWE as a corporate entity that allegedly enabled years of misconduct. Grant, a former WWE employee who had been hired back in 2019 initially as a contract administrator before being reassigned to serve as McMahon's personal assistant, alleged violations that would make your stomach turn and your blood run cold. We're talking about claims under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, allegations of repeated sexual assault, sustained emotional abuse, and the deliberate creation of a hostile work environment. The lawsuit sought to void a 2022 non-disclosure agreement under which McMahon had paid Grant $1 million, but allegedly withheld the remaining $2 million that had been promised to her as part of their settlement. But here's where Brock Lesnar enters this particular nightmare, and this is where the story takes an even darker turn. In the original complaint, a former UFC heavyweight champion and WWE superstar was referenced multiple times throughout the document without being explicitly named. Media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, quickly identified this mysterious individual as Brock Lesnar based on the specific details provided. Then came January 31st, 2025, and an amended complaint that ran an astonishing 104 pages long, filled with disturbing allegations. This updated version explicitly named Lesnar by his full legal name, mentioning him 44 separate times throughout the lengthy document. Now, let's be absolutely crystal clear about something here, because precision and accuracy matter enormously when dealing with allegations of this serious nature. Lesnar is not a defendant in this lawsuit. He has not been criminally charged with anything whatsoever by any law enforcement agency. He is not accused of physically assaulting or trafficking Grant himself in any way. The claims contained within the lawsuit portray him as a passive beneficiary of McMahon's alleged scheme to retain top talent through WWE contracts valued at well over $100 million. But the specific allegations laid out in the lawsuit are deeply disturbing nonetheless, and raise serious questions about the culture that existed behind the scenes at WWE during this period. According to the amended complaint, in July 2021, McMahon allegedly directed Grant to create personalized pornographic content that was specifically tailored to Lesnar's known interests and preferences as part of a deliberate effort to entice him to re-sign with WWE and remain with the company. Text messages allegedly included in the lawsuit show McMahon referring to Lesnar as their next playmate, in a context that suggested Grant would be offered to him as part of his contract negotiations. The lawsuit further claims that in December 2021, McMahon personally gave Lesnar Grant's private phone number without her knowledge or consent. Lesnar allegedly texted Grant requesting a specific type of explicit video that catered to his particular interests. Grant complied with this request according to the lawsuit, under what she describes as extreme duress and fear of losing her job and financial stability. The complaint alleges alleges that Lesnar responded to her compliance in a derogatory manner and warned her in no uncertain terms that non-compliance with future requests would make him lose interest in the arrangement entirely. Then came January 2022, and the situation allegedly escalated even further. The lawsuit alleges that McMahon personally booked Lesnar a flight to Connecticut for a sexual encounter with Grant that was explicitly described as part of the deal for his lucrative contract renewal. According to the complaint, the planned encounter ultimately fell through due to a snowstorm that disrupted travel. Lesnar allegedly arrived at a dinner intoxicated and left the event early before anything could transpire. The lawsuit claims that after Lesnar subsequently re-signed with WWE for an enormous sum, McMahon texted Grant stating in explicit terms that part of the deal was supposed to include a sexual encounter with her. These allegations paint a horrifying and disturbing picture of WWE's backstage culture under McMahon's leadership during this era. The lawsuit describes a systematic pattern where McMahon allegedly used Grant as a sexual pawn to secure talent deals, sharing explicit photos and videos of her with multiple individuals both inside and outside the company as a form of currency. McMahon has vehemently and repeatedly denied all allegations contained in the lawsuit, calling it a smear campaign and publicity stunt designed to extort money from him and damage his reputation. He resigned from TKO Group Holdings, WWE's parent company, just days after the original complaint was filed in January 2024. John Laurinaitis initially denied any involvement in the alleged misconduct, but then settled with Grant in May 2025 and agreed to provide evidence against McMahon and WWE as part of his settlement agreement. The case was stayed for 6 months starting in May 2024 at the explicit request of the U.S. Department of Justice, which had initiated a criminal probe into McMahon's conduct. That stay has since expired, and civil proceedings have resumed with full force. As of December 1st, 2025, no trial date has been officially set, but discovery is ongoing despite numerous objections from McMahon's defense team. The lawsuit also ties directly into broader McMahon scandals that have emerged in recent years. In January 2025, McMahon agreed to pay a $19.23 million SEC settlement for undisclosed hush money payments to at least 4 different women totaling well over $12 million. The Securities and Exchange Commission found that McMahon had failed to properly disclose these payments to shareholders, which were recorded in WWE's official books as compensation for services that were never actually rendered. For Lesnar specifically, the fallout from the lawsuit was immediate and severe. He was removed from WWE's iconic Then Now Forever intro video that plays before every broadcast. He was pulled from the cover of the WWE 2K24 video game. He was removed from the Supercard mobile game entirely. His planned dramatic return at the 2024 Royal Rumble was completely scrapped. WrestleMania 40 plans involving Lesnar were abandoned entirely and never revisited. Lesnar's attorney has not publicly commented on any of the allegations whatsoever. His complete and total silence has been absolutely deafening, and interpretations of that silence vary dramatically depending on who you ask. Some view it as the smart legal play, refusing to engage publicly with claims in which he's not technically named as a defendant. Others see it as a clear indication that even someone as powerful and connected as Brock Lesnar recognizes when speaking publicly could only serve to make things considerably worse. Online forums absolutely exploded with heated debate about the allegations and what they meant for Lesnar's legacy. On Reddit's Squared Circle community, a thread about the ESPN report naming Lesnar accumulated well over 2,600 upvotes and thousands of comments. Users argued passionately back and forth about culpability and what Lesnar knew or should have known. Some pointed out that Lesnar potentially had absolutely no way of knowing that Grant was allegedly being coerced into these interactions against her will. Others questioned loudly why anyone would accept explicit content from their boss's assistant without asking some very basic questions about the circumstances surrounding such an unusual arrangement. The phrase, "Brock Lesnar sentenced, goodbye forever," began trending across multiple social media platforms, even though it fundamentally and completely misrepresented the actual reality of the legal situation. Lesnar has not been sentenced to anything because he has not been charged with any crime by any prosecutor. prosecutor. The sensationalized and misleading headline became a powerful magnet for clickbait content across YouTube and social media, with thumbnails screaming about guilty verdicts and lengthy prison sentences that simply never happened in reality. But the court of public opinion operates on entirely different rules than actual courtrooms with judges and juries. And in that arena, Lesnar was taking significant damage that might prove impossible to repair. The return that divided fans forever. Despite absolutely everything that had transpired, despite the 44 separate mentions in the trafficking lawsuit, despite the overwhelming public backlash on social media, despite the removal from video games and promotional materials, Brock Lesnar walked right back into a WWE arena on August 3, 2025, as if nothing had ever happened. At SummerSlam, after the main event concluded with Cody Rhodes losing the WWE Championship in dramatic fashion, Lesnar emerged from the back and viciously attacked John Cena, to the shock of millions watching around the world. The crowd reaction inside that arena was absolutely massive and impossible to ignore. Years of anticipation for Lesnar's return had built up to a fever pitch, and for many fans in attendance that night, the serious allegations swirling around him were secondary concerns compared to their desire to see the Beast incarnate back in action, doing what he does best. WWE's legal team had officially cleared Lesnar for return in late July 2025, citing no evidence whatsoever that Lesnar had any knowledge of any alleged coercion taking place behind the scenes. Triple H reportedly cited John Cena's personal desire to work with Lesnar as a significant factor in the decision to bring him back. The reaction from Grant's legal team was immediate, scathing, and pulled absolutely no punches. Her representatives issued a statement declaring that WWE has done nothing to ensure those responsible are held accountable, and characterized the return as an attempt to sweep misconduct under the rug that would ultimately backfire spectacularly on the company. WWE, for its part, declined to respond publicly to these pointed criticisms. From September through November 2025, Lesnar engaged in a high-profile feud with John Cena that produced 3 marquee matches, including a featured bout at the WrestlePalooza event. At Survivor Series on November 30th, 2025, Lesnar teamed with the heel faction in War Games and emerged victorious after a brutal and entertaining match. He's currently advertised prominently for WrestleMania 42 in April 2026. The goodbye that so many outraged fans loudly demanded on social media never actually materialized into reality. On X, formerly Twitter, posts demanding accountability and consequences accumulated hundreds of engagements from passionate users. People called loudly for boycotts of WWE programming, pointed repeatedly to the 44 damning mentions in the trafficking lawsuit, and expressed profound frustration that WWE would give such a prominent platform to someone so closely connected to such serious and disturbing allegations. But the viewership numbers told an entirely different and more complicated story. SummerSlam 2025 became one of the highest-grossing events in WWE history, proving once again that outrage on social media doesn't always translate into real commercial consequences. The discourse around Lesnar's controversial return revealed a fundamental tension in how fans consume wrestling content in the modern era. On one hand, there's a growing awareness of accountability and a genuine desire to see consequences for those connected to misconduct. On the other hand, there's the undeniable and irresistible pulling power of someone like Lesnar, a genuine crossover star who moves the needle in ways that very few performers in the history of the business have ever been able to achieve. Reddit threads and communities like r4moi accumulated over 140 upvotes, with users expressing anger about what they perceived as yet another instance of a powerful figure escaping any meaningful accountability for their actions. Some users dug up old stories about Lesnar's reportedly problematic behavior from his early career that had circulated for years. Others defended him passionately, pointing out repeatedly that he was never charged with anything, and that the lawsuit explicitly does not accuse him of assault or trafficking anyone. In the WWE Games community, discussions about Lesnar appearing in WWE 2K25 despite the ongoing lawsuit took a more mocking and sardonic tone. Users joked darkly about being named 44 times in a federal lawsuit, but facing absolutely no legal consequences, while still appearing prominently in video games. The gallows humor reflected a certain resignation to the unfortunate reality that commercial interests often override moral concerns in professional wrestling. Meanwhile, the lawsuit against Vince McMahon continues to grind slowly through the legal system. The DOJ criminal probe remains ongoing, and with Laurinaitis now cooperating fully with Grant's legal team, the potential for new and damaging revelations revelations remains very real. Discovery is proceeding despite McMahon's numerous objections, and a potential trial could occur sometime in 2026. If that happens, Lesnar could theoretically be called as a witness, forced to address under oath the specific allegations that he has thus far steadfastly declined to publicly acknowledge. The goodbye forever that trended across social media proved to be nothing more than wishful thinking from critics rather than any actual reflection of reality. Lesnar has not been sentenced for any crime because no criminal charges have been filed against him. The phrase became a rallying cry for those demanding accountability and simultaneously a point of confusion for those who saw sensationalized headlines without reading the fine print of what was actually happening legally. What we're ultimately left with is a complicated legacy that defies easy categorization or simple moral judgments. Lesnar remains one of the most accomplished combat sports athletes of his entire generation, a genuine draw in both professional wrestling and mixed martial arts, who has achieved things that most fighters can only dream about. His UFC PED violation will forever asterisk his MMA record in the eyes of many fans, and Mark Hunt's failed lawsuit represents a fighter who sought justice through legitimate legal channels and found only financial ruin and years of frustration. The Janelle Grant lawsuit represents something far more serious and potentially damaging. The allegations against McMahon, if ultimately proven true in a court of law, would paint a picture of systematic abuse at the highest levels of professional wrestling's biggest and most influential company. Lesnar's role in that alleged scheme raises troubling questions about what he knew and when he knew it. Even if legal culpability proves difficult or impossible to establish, WWE cleared him. The courts have not charged him, but the court of public opinion remains deeply divided. Every single time Lesnar steps into that ring, he carries with him the weight of 44 mentions in a federal trafficking lawsuit. Every F5 he delivers comes with an invisible asterisk that some fans simply cannot unsee no matter how hard they try. The Beast Incarnate has survived every single legal challenge that has ever been thrown at him throughout his controversial career. From the 2001 arrest that saw charges dropped after lab results came back to the 2016 PED scandal that ended with nothing more than a slap on the wrist, to the current allegations that have thus far resulted in no consequences whatsoever, Lesnar has proven remarkably resilient. Whether that resilience represents justice served or justice denied depends entirely on who you ask. For Mark Hunt, the man who lost nearly 8 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars chasing accountability through the legal system, the system failed him completely. He faces potential bankruptcy while Lesnar and UFC walked away without paying a single dime in damages. For Janelle Grant, the legal battle continues. Her lawsuit against McMahon and WWE proceeds through discovery, and Laurinaitis' cooperation could prove crucial in establishing the full scope of what allegedly occurred. For WWE and TKO, the calculus is purely financial. Lesnar draws viewers, sells tickets, and moves merchandise. Until the commercial consequences of his controversies outweigh the benefits of his star power, he will continue to be featured prominently. Brock Lesnar was never sentenced. The goodbye forever never came. The Beast Incarnate remains, as he has always been, a force of nature that conventional rules seem unable to constrain. The story isn't finished being written, but if history is any guide, the Beast usually wins in the end.